And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, live on the Philippe Matthews Show after hours. Thank you for tuning in wherever you are around the world. Got my laptop today, a new little location in the den here, and seeing how it's going to happen, how it's going to work. Back with Emunah Y'srael in our conversation on roots and everything melanated, our melanated literacy and conscious conversation series. As you know, Emunah is the creator of Soulonomics. Soulonomics, 101, and the author of The Angry Black Woman Syndrome, as well as the B. Levar Journal, which is a 12-step guide for examination and purification. She is also a soul inspiring and a soul inspiration who, in memory of her darkness, finds honor in sharing the process of turning her pain into purpose and use it as a catalyst for change. Welcome back, Emunah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Brother Philippe.
All right. Now, I see we got the babies back there. They tested mommy today. I see they tested mommy.
Yeah,
I see it in your eyes. I was like, okay, Emunah, we don't want to see nothing on the air. You know, turn the camera off. You know, like Bernie Mac used to do, cut the camera off. Just cut the camera off.
Yeah, it's a funny game. As soon as I say I got something to do, they're like, yeah, now's the time to go.
That's how it was. That's how I did it. That's how I did it when I was little. I sure did. When my mom was on the phone, I went absolutely buck wild. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I'm blessed to be here because after she got off that phone, oh Lord.
Yeah, it's like they already know, but I'm gonna try anyway. You got like I'm gonna try anyway. Might as well try it, So
might as well try it. That's all right. That's what babies are for. So now, in our conversation last time was about starting the conversation about roots in the mini-series, which was absolutely amazing. We got some really great and interesting feedback.
Yes.
And comments from people who watched both Roots and the show that we did, and I wanted to read comments that we received and just kind of have a dialogue with you about your thoughts. And we had some offline conversations about this as well, but I want to have your thoughts about this. So I think it was Vector 313 wrote that, it's 3 paragraphs here. I really feel like Roots does a psychological disservice to Black people by starting the narrative halfway through in order to dumb down or ignore the origins of the slave trade and not depict when whites actually came into Africa, dropped guns among the tribes, and started an arms race that enabled the sale of slaves by Africans. She goes on to say that I am very, very disappointed in the first episode of the remake. My biggest problem with the new series is that the first episode really skewed the narrative to Africans totally being behind the slave trade. And even in the Maryland sale scene, they removed the feel of the original series where white men gathered with their families at slave auctions. She ended her comment with, and then there was just Samson bringing Kunta Kinte to the plantation, and when Kunta ran, there was only the slaves who ran him down. A lot to break down in there. A lot to break down in there. Are you with me in sound?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. Oh yeah, you had to. I know that one. You said, "Let me turn the." I had to turn the mic off because I was saying some stuff. Was not necessarily. It is Philippe Matthews Show after hours, after all. But
my daughter's making my daughter laugh, and when they start laughing, like all over the place. So I told her to, stop it. So yeah, it's all good. Yeah, like you said, there was a lot in that comment, and Vector 313 has started also to listen to some of the other things that we are doing. So this is, I shared it on my page as well, and many people showed up for that purpose. I've heard that pushback before as well concerning not liking where the narrative starts. But if I could remember, the way in which Roots is projecting, it is actually supposed to be Alex Haley's family story. And so Alex Haley, in writing the book, is going to start his family story not where the European enters, because he doesn't know about that. He's going to first start the family story where now this is how you get into captivity. This is how it happened. So we have to keep in mind who's telling the story, from what perspective are they telling the story. Like, they didn't get to just totally make up like it's some type of fiction that they can go in different directions. Really, it's where yeah, if you can understand what I'm saying. And so when you put that into perspective, the some of the things that we are requiring, that would have been Alex Haley's responsibility when he's initially penning this narrative.
So it wasn't a documentary.
No, it's exactly. We're kind of looking at it from, okay, we wanted to be able to tell us all the things we need to know. For me, approaching it in that way is not realistic for me, because the reality is this is starting out in a point. If you told a story, it's like, for instance, the Malcolm X movie. It's really long because they have to try to get a whole lot of stuff in there. And I could, I read the narrative when I was really young. I read the autobiography, and there's so much more, but you can't put every single thing into a motion picture. And this is something else that we need to be watching these things. If we're watching documentaries, if we're watching things, faction, as they like to say, or things such as Roots and Underground, we need to come from a perspective of having done our homework. Because
talk to us about that. What does that mean, doing our homework first?
Doing our homework means, like, I talked to the young man today, Broderick, and he was like, some people that he knows just wait for things to come on like this to tell you your history. I saw those tweets on Twitter and on Facebook, like, oh, wow, this is the first time I'm being introduced to this narrative. For me, that's a problem, because now you don't know. There's nothing to measure against. There's no cross-reference. You understand? So when we were watching it, when I was watching it this time around, I can reference what it is that I've been reading, what it is that I've been learning, to see whether or not, okay, you're giving me inaccurate information or not, And so that's my thoughts on the beginning of that question as to whether or not they should have started in the guns and the trinkets and the liquor being dropped in Africa. How much did Alex Haley really know of that portion? I don't know how much he knew of that.
So the strong wording, though, in the beginning was a psychological disservice to Black people. Were there any aspects of Roots that you felt were a psychological disservice of Alex Haley's story?
Like I said, for me, elements of truth, because there are people who are saying, Alex Haley plagiarized, he went to court on the case. But like I said before, after reading a quite number of these narratives over a period of time, you get to see that there were many similar stories, because you came from the similar place, you were put on a similar boat and taken to a similar location. So
and had a very similar experience.
Yeah,
339 years. Yeah.
Okay. So if this is how a series like Underground can source these narratives and come up with something that looks very realistic, because there were similar experiences. So to say a psychological disservice, for me, what is a psychological disservice is not investing at least an hour a week to find the truth out for ourselves. What I think is a psychological disservice is waiting for someone who we continue to call the oppressor to fully educate you on what you need to know to be able to move forward. So if it is that it was total rubbish, like nothing was correct, and the clothing wasn't correct for the time, and the conversation wasn't correct for the time, that is antebellum, going right into the Civil War during the time of Roots. They started in the 1700s late, and you see it working its way up. And you saw Quakers represented there, which were people who from the onset said, hey, this is not a good look. You understand what I'm saying? You see different narratives like the Civil War coming in, and you see Chicken George going off to the Civil War. So they're giving you the time frame. And if you want to go into that time frame and begin to study early 1800s to when they abolished the international slave trade to what we are seeing, then we can have that conversation. I find it hard to have a conversation when we don't have anything to bring to the table. And not saying it specifically to Vector 313. I'm just talking about in all the things that I've heard. when we don't have any hard things to say, hey, let's take a look at this again. Let's take a look at these records. If we're not coming to the table like that, then we're not ready. I don't really think we're ready to come to the table to have, we could talk about how we feel, but then what we know is something totally different.
But you can have an opinion, but you can't really contribute to a deeper conversation because you have no context.
Right. Right. And this is what I'm saying. What I hear a lot on this conversation is how we feel. Like, you know, and the reality is we are allowed to feel and we should feel, but what we're processing it through the fact that we're resistant to even feeling in the first place. So because we're resistant and we don't want to see it and we don't want to hear it, what we're feeling is nothing but objections as to why we shouldn't. And those objections are not based on what it's really saying. It's based on, again, how we feel about what it's saying.
Well, let's talk about that. You know, why do you think we're so fragmented and ashamed of slavery? There's a lot of people who I think more so now in this generation than when the Roots originally aired, that are just absolutely horrified that it even came on, and that there's a dialogue about it, and just absolutely don't want to talk about it.
It's denial. Like, I go back to my domestic violence situation, my theory, right? That is,
I like that. Yes, right? Yes.
And if you have a young child in the house who's been abused, right? And everybody knows, but when they come around to the family meeting or the outing, why don't you want to talk about it? Why do you get upset the minute somebody begins to even allude to what everybody is aware of, but no one wants to address? It's kind of the same thing for me. You know, why do people get upset? Because you're talking about something that I don't want to deal with. So you're disturbing my peace. Leave me alone in my denial. Leave me alone in my anger. Because oftentimes with this anger, we don't know where to point to that. And then it points inward and it begins to destroy us. And then at another portion, because we're not really to say, hey, it's not everybody, and we need to kind of see where the injury came, they don't want to do that either. So I want to, not me personally, there are people who wants to blame every European. You know what I'm saying? And then when you say, okay, that's not really accurate, oh, you're taking up for them. You know?
Well, you know, I have, like, I call them the modern day abolitionists that I have on my show. And these are white folk, both men and women, mostly women, that are, and we're going to do a show on this, but are genuinely think and know that not only slavery was wrong, but racism is unequivocally wrong. And we saw a little bit of that in Roots, with the hanging of the slave master's brother's wife.
Right, at the end, yeah.
So abolitionists and white folk were hung and killed and prosecuted, if not more so, sometimes than the savagery that was bestowed upon us.
They called them niggas. Excuse my French. This is the language of the day. They call them nigga sympathizers, okay, or they would say nigga lovers. And these are the people who, even if the laws against reading from Virginia, California, South Carolina, the law was punishable for the person caught reading and the person teaching the person how to read. And oftentimes that was, quote, Europeans who they would fine or lash. There was, in the time of, as I'm reading, the time of when it's getting where abolition is at its height, the what's his name again? The guy who wrote The Liberator, and he published that. I forgot how many copies he published, but I know he was writing that newspaper for over 20-something years. Like his newspaper was the reason. I got a William Lloyd Garrison, I think that's his name, of The Liberator. He was one of the main reasons that they started to get really strict on not reading, because he was publishing anti-slavery information. They didn't want it to, they didn't want it to, what's the word I'm looking for, rile up the Negroes. And so if you were caught with any, he was a thorn in their side, let's just say that. And so he was one of the Europeans who said, not only do I think this is not, he's the one who, Frederick Douglass came and they was having a conversation. They was having a, yeah, William, I know I wasn't bugging out. That's his name, William Lloyd Garrison from 1831 to 1865. And when there's a big documentary called The Abolitionists. And that's a good one to take a look at and see. And he had some dealings with Frederick Douglass. They fell out along the way. But the point of the matter is they tried to rough him up. I mean, severely. Like they wanted to, they ran up on him, tried to burn down his place and wanted to lynch him up because they were like, I can't believe you're in here rallying with these, you know, these folks. And so there were many people.
So what do you think it is? Do you think that the pain, you know, is this another classic example of post-traumatic slave syndrome that Dr. Joy talks about, where the pain and the trauma and the shame of it is so powerful that just all white people are bad, that there can't be really any quote unquote good white people out there. Is that what you're hearing from some of us?
Yeah, it's kind of like the little girl who gets violated and then says all men are bad. You know, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like the one who get the mother who or the wife who gets cheated on and said all men are dogs. We see it in or the man who gets cheated on or left at the altar and then says all women ain't nothing. It's a safe space if we stay there, because we don't have to. If we stay there, then we can protect ourselves. Because basically, the mind, the heart, the self, the ego wants to protect itself against injury. So we have all of these mechanisms, like eyes blink to protect, and you know, to protect you. If something coming to your eye, you blink. Why? Because your eye doesn't want that injury. You know, we have reflexes so that we don't get injured. So we also have that internally as well. Reflexes that we put in place so that we can kind of lessen whatever injury that's going to come. So we choose not to trust everyone who looks like the offender. And that way, you know, we'll be in a safe little space. I don't really have to get to know you. I don't really have to process, you know, I can just stay away from you, period. And that's kind of what a lot of us are doing. When we say we don't want to hear about it, or we don't want to talk about it, or all people are this, and all, because it can stay ambiguous, it can stay cloudy, it can stay all mixed up, and we don't have to put forth the energy or the effort to try to put everything in its right place.
Now, in the green room, we were talking about there was a guy that sent an email to you or a comment to you that you wanted to talk about, who was very traumatized by the original showing of Roots when he was young.
Yes.
And I want you to share that story as well, because really, I mean, the work that you're doing, like we keep referencing post-traumatic slave syndrome and PTSD, Dr. Joy DeGruy's work, but the real work also is about what you're doing with soul healing. Your core work is to heal the soul. And I'd like for you to share with us that story, and then let's dialogue about how, you know, how he can move toward a state of healing.
Yeah, so basically, and like you said, concerning the work, it's like, you know, there's different levels to it. And so I'm on the ground, and as it relates to just story time. Let's talk and let's discuss. And that's basically where I'm at, and a lot of people are connected with it. So this one brother, Roderick, he saw me, you know, reviewing Roots, and so he sent me an email of a blog he wrote, and he was saying as to why he didn't watch it, but it wasn't for the reason that it was kind of similar, but I like the way in which he articulated himself. He just wasn't like, I'm not watching it just because, you know, he went in the trauma that happened when he was in the 5th grade, when one day he came into class and the teacher was like, hey, we're going to watch a movie. If anybody remembers movie time, like I remember movie time. If I don't have to do work, then movie time is what's up. So he said, hey,
absolutely,
movie time, you know, he was all excited. Like, and they put it on and he was traumatized. He said, wow. You know, he was shocked. I guess it was mostly Europeans in the class. He said 2 other little melanated children girls. No one else seemed to be as bothered as he was. And he was very disturbed.
He was the only male. He was the only black male boy.
Yes, he was the only male in the class, and he was bothered. And he went home and said he was bothered. So in the article and on the interview, he told me his mother called him and said, "Hey, Roots is coming on the remake. Are you gonna watch it?" He's like, you know, like I'm not watching that. You know, but it's funny because he did tell me I won't watch that, but I might watch Birth of a Nation. That's supposed to be coming out because it's a narrative written and directed by a melanated person, and he's looking forward to the perspective being different. But like I keep saying, Alex Haley, to my understanding, he has some melanin. So you know,
I would think so. I was gonna say like, wait a minute, Dr. Myron Haley and Alex are both.
There was no melanated.
Yeah, because this is the story of Kunta Kinte. I thought they were black. I didn't, you know, I thought they were melanated. I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
But no, not you know, not taking any or minimizing this man's visceral reaction and journey to Roots. That, you know, I remember having a conversation with Dr. Joy, and we were talking about the connection between PTSD and PTSS, post-traumatic stress disorder, and post-traumatic slave syndrome. And that injury of post-traumatic slave syndrome is whereby we continue to get re-injured. Yeah. Because we've never, no one or nothing has ever come to deal with our epigenetic injury of slavery. And so then we develop post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms as a result of the re-injury. And so this young man, it's both. He had, from the post-traumatic slave syndrome, he had a PTSD reaction to it. And it completely traumatized him, as it would, I think most people who would watch it would have some type of, I mean, unless you're completely a sociopath, that you have no emotion for watching something like that and seeing something like that, or might get off on something like that. You're a sociopath, a psychopath, that's fine. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about, especially us melanated people watching something like that, and then having that a reaction. I guess the question that I have for you, Emunah, is, would you coach him or coax him toward watching it, because he will never ever get healed from it until he dives in it and then subsequently dives through it?
And that's exactly what we were having the conversation about, among other things. He was telling me what he would be more interested in seeing. Like I was telling you earlier, he would be more interested in seeing the money. You know, he would be more interested in seeing the economic perspective of slavery. What did the slave master do with all the money that they earned? What companies today are connected? So I actually shared with him about the Wolf family. There was a documentary done about, they were one of the biggest slave traders in the North, and he didn't know about them. So I said, there are things of this nature done, not to the forefront of this big spectacular presentation as it was Roots, but trust me, there are some people walking around, some Europeans walking around, who don't know and didn't know the degree or the fact that they were connected in this way. And so I said to him today, I said, for me, all things are important. It's important to know the economy and how it still affects us today. It's also important to know the psychological effects, the emotional effects, the mental effects. And here is why. If we concentrate only on economy, which there are some out there who do, what you're going to find is when you try to actually do it, because you're damaged in other areas, it keeps coming down. You know what I'm saying? And so when you say, let's build businesses, but I don't appreciate your labor, because for how many hundreds of years, we were told that it's not worth anything. And so we still have that thought process that your labor is not worth anything and neither is mine. This is the thought. And this is why we always see our people say, give me the hookup. But for the same thing that you offer, they will go to the European and pay. Taught to do that way. You were taught to behave that way. So, like I said, all of this needs to be addressed, because without
this is beautiful conversation. Absolutely, I'm glad you bring that point up. We had this conversation too about our intellectual property.
Yes.
Right, and I've written books about this, so this is my thing. And that is, yeah, man. You know, okay, now you know. Now it's time for me to get on my soapbox now. Okay, now you done had your time. Now it's my time right now.
Get on the soapbox, Brother Philippe.
So here's the thing: is that I've learned to value everything that I think, say, and do.
Correct.
And to monetize everything that I think, say, and do. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to purchase it.
Right.
But it means that I have learned you have to first start with valuing
yourself,
what you think and what you say and what you do. Right. And once you do that, then you can figure out how to monetize that. Now, you and I are in, quote unquote, the intellectual property business. Now, we have been taught as melanated people that we don't have an intellect.
Correct.
That our intellect is not, and if we do have an intellect, it's discounted and minimized. And at best, our intellect has been put into maybe a religious context, where one of the big problems and misnomers is the concept of tithing in the religious context, where you might have someone come in that can give you really great information and education to activate your life, but because you've been proselytized to give $5 or $10 or no dollars, you don't activate the information. The brain completely discounts it as it's not valuable.
That's right.
Because there's no stretch, there's no monetary value to something that you tie through. It's like, oh, it's a thank you. It becomes what I call theological entertainment. And that's how it's processed. And so, as you said, you value what the European has placed in front of you in terms of education, and you will pay full dollar for that, or more, not even full dollar, you pay more than that sometimes, and it will stretch you. But when someone who looks exactly like you is doing the exact same thing, or perhaps even better, you can't do it because you think that it's that post-traumatic slave syndrome in you. That's that vacant esteem that Dr. Joy talks about, that you just can't do it. And that's what we have to fight for.
And can I just say this, Brother Philippe? It was, I had a few things that came to my mind, but one thing with that is it was beat out of you. Understand that if you took your brother's word or your sister's word, that could mean your life. That could mean your skin off your back, literally, because
or the life of your loved ones.
Or the life of your loved one, because you were chastised if Master didn't say. If Master say, don't talk to that person, and you're caught talking to that person, that equals punishment. So we have to understand, like we speak about epigenetics, it's not just, I don't like to listen to you just because, it's because over a long period of time, you were taught that unless it comes from these type of individual who looks this way, you can get in trouble for whatever you're about to do, think you're going to do. Because if like in the case of the patty rollers, AKA the patrollers, if you're caught coming together and having a conversation, that's looking kind of suspicious. I don't think
that still happens to this day.
And it still happens. So like you're saying, it's important. That's why I said, how can we not? How can we afford not to look at these things and read these things and understand that, wow, am I like that? Am I really like that? Is that what's going on? Is that how I look at you? And then we say stuff like we're not dependable. We don't show up on time. We got bad customer service. Now, next to loving the soul healing, I love entrepreneurship. And I try my utmost to deliver. And what you say you're going to do, because this is what's going to rebuild the confidence. So we have to because we have that mentality that oftentimes, not all, but some, because we were forced to work, our labor was extracted out of us for so long. We have a resentment, keeping it 100, like they say in the streets. We have a resentment to being told what to do. We have a resentment for certain levels of rules, for timeliness, for order.
Right.
Why we have that quote angry black woman syndrome, the angry black men. It's like because you can't tell them what to do, and we have to realize that resentment is coming, and rightfully so, based on the situation. The resentment is coming from your labor being exacted without compensation for a long period of time.
That's right.
And so
that is correct.
Act like we're doing you a favor. When we are in business now, we act like we're doing you a favor just to show up.
Right, exactly. Just to show up there, not to do a damn thing.
I didn't even do nothing yet. How you lucky I even came out here? What you want me to do?
Really lucky I even came to work today. Hell, shit. You know what I mean?
Like, well, how come I'm lucky and you open for business? So
right.
we have to, like I told Broderick today, I said, he said, what can we do, Emunah? I said, my estimation is just like when you're coming to say, you know what, I realize that the food I've been eating is unhealthy. The first thing you do is stop eating that food. The second thing you do is do detox from the effects of that food. So we have to at least stop eating that food, stop buying into that narrative, and be honest. Say, yes, I do have a bad attitude. Yes, I feel a little bit of resentment. And then you could begin to figure out why.
This is really good.
If we're gonna be in denial, like, no, I don't really act like that. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
And this is why we're like, we're afraid of each other because of the scamming, because of not delivering, because of nasty attitude, terrible customer service.
Right.
Not everybody, but it's like, so then the people say, well, when I go to the European, he's saying money back guarantee. We have 100. When the people say, when I go to the European and call the number, it's not disconnected. You understand what I'm saying? The people, when you go into these spaces, they have these things in place to say, I can trust this process. But when you go into spaces and businesses where, you broke it, you buy it, that's not my problem. That's why you're not going to go back. Why? Because they're not treating you. And this is, again, what is from, because I don't value me, I don't value you.
Right. Exactly. This is a tough conversation to have, but so needed, because I pride myself on having the dirty laundry conversations. You know what I'm talking about? We're airing our dirty laundry. It's like, oh, he shouldn't be talking about that in public. What are you doing? This is our dirty laundry. But it's a true aspect of ourselves.
Everybody's dirty laundry. I mean, everybody got some
laundry
up in there. The European got a sock. You got some underwear. Everybody got some laundry up in there. You didn't just become
absolutely, man.
You didn't just become this way. I read in a book. I believe it was in the South Carolina. Yes, it was in South Carolina. And next time I'll share the fullness of the story. But basically, the story was like this. There was a point where the women, after they did their work, they had a little extra from their garden that they would grow. And so they would go and sell. This was earlier on, and I have to get the specifics for you. But as we're talking about business, they would go and sell at the market. Well, at that time, the Europeans around did not have necessary access to certain other food. So come here, baby. What these women did was they locked it down. And they were enslaved, no less. Okay. And what they did is they made sure that if you go here, I say $5, you go there, it's going to be $5. These Europeans got upset. They started writing letters. They started complaining. They were so pissed off because of that cooperative economics that had the whole market on lock. Because even some places in Africa, like Ethiopia, which is one of the biggest open air markets, Ghana, Nigeria, a lot of women are market women. You know what I'm saying? Kenya and all these places. And so they brought that thought process of a market woman, so to say, to the markets. And I have to share that story in more detail because that is a prime example of cooperative economics, but it also is a prime example of the other side of it, where people seeing you behaving that way and they feel now it's unfair, it's unjust, you're taking advantage of us,
Well, I think the other we can go even deeper than that. I think, one of the themes, one of the other underlying themes of Roots was the fear of insurrection.
Yeah.
And to this day, the economic fear of a collective nation of melanated people is a huge fear in being able to change and shake up alter the economic history of this country. And so we remember what they call the Black Holocaust, and what happens every time we get together, whether it's by force or by segregation force, or or on our own, that they are the economic powers that be, the 1%, the Eurasians, that we become economically capable and cohesive, like the Jewish population and other Euro-Asian populations. So let's talk about that level of fear as well. So it's not just jealousy. Now there's another part of it where it's jealousy. So like the lower class whites, the people who are the lower class whites who are not educated, that's a class issue for them because they're not educated. They don't understand economic power because they don't have economics. Because they're poor whites. But for the elite, they recognize that that is something that can change the direction of their particular, their economic status, which is why it was such a big deal for slavery to end in the first place.
Correct. It's like you're saying, there's levels to this thing. That's actually a quote that I got out of these narratives, that one of the elders says there's levels to this thing. There's levels to slavery, there's levels to the conversation. Like you said, we could go deeper or we could come to the surface, and it really depends on who we're having the conversation with and what direction we're going in, And so I definitely agree that for many reasons. And I was saying that as I was reading, I didn't read the whole thing yet, but the Thomas Jefferson, his notes, and where everybody, you quote that he was talking about Black people and the fact that they stink, and he was saying all the kind of, some real racist stuff. But one of the things they were trying to do, he was like, hey, if we free these people, they can't stay here, man. And when he's in the portion in which he's writing this information, this is what he's saying. Like, if they stay here, it's going to be on and popping. And so there was actually there was a committee, or there was an organization that was supposed to be collecting funds to send people newly freed back to Africa. We see, and that didn't happen. I'm gonna get the name of the organization, but that didn't happen. But in my research so far, not only didn't it happen on their end, there were some people who said, "Oh, you know what? I was enslaved in this country. I don't know anything about Africa, and I don't want to go back." And so that's the next side of the conversation, that we have those among us who didn't want to go back when the opportunity presented itself.
That's a powerful conversation as well. I think let's have that conversation in next time, because that's a whole nother thing. Is like the Back to Africa. I guess we'll call it the Back to Africa movement. But those who didn't want to leave because they, this land was all they knew, even though to this day we still don't have, quote unquote, our own nationality, if you will.
Correct. It's called, I'm trying to find out, it's colonial. They wanted to make, I'm gonna say, they wanted to make the I believe it was Liberia. They wanted to make colonies, and in that colony was where they sent it. And we saw that in the movie. If you saw the movie, The Book of Negroes, which was another very good. I have to find it next time when we have that conversation.
No problem.
My names. But in the Book of Negroes, you saw that where they were supposed to go back, and she actually went back. But it's like, you know what that whole thing was like. They were a little bit half-hearted with it, because it's like when you go to the supermarket and you picked up the grapes in the fresh produce section, but by the time you get to the end, you don't want the grapes no more, so you drop it off in the deodorant section. You're like, nah, I can't go all the way back. You know what? I'm gonna just leave these grapes right here. Like, I tried to put you back. Like, at least I left you in the vicinity. Oh man,
that is a great analogy.
So, you ripped them out of their space.
Now, of course, I don't do that. I have never done that ever. Yeah, right.
Yeah. But it's funny because I have a son. My son, he's 4. And he's so diligent that he'll pick something up, and I say, no, put this back. And do you know the little boy will walk back down the aisle to put it back?
Nice.
I'm like, and the people in the
I am notorious for that. If I'm like, I don't want it, I'll just put it right there and say, hey, that's what the store clerks are for. I'm sorry. I apologize, people. I know. Oh my God, I'm notorious, especially at Walmart, big stores, Costco. Oh, I'm notorious. I'm notorious. I know people are like, how the hell did it even get over here? Because you had to put some time into the store to walk this far, Philippe, to put the damn thing where, because this ain't even in the same vicinity of the store. Correct. What the hell?
And that's kind of what they did. And I said, that's a good thing for us to speak about, because that's kind of what they did. Like, yo, I know I stole you from Nigeria, but I'm not really trying to go all the way back there. How about you just chill right here? And so there's people who went back to these places, and we could definitely go into that more research and take more look about it. I'm trying to remember the name of the society that they started on this side, but of course, I guess they didn't want to put the money or the time or the effort, because the thing is, ego, when ego is into play, it's all about what's most not only desirable, but what's the payoff. So if we're dealing, you know, the payoff to, you know, the payoff to build ships and go halfway across the world to steal some people, to bring them halfway back across the world, the payoff was money. But what payoff am I going to get to put you back there? And it's not really that important. You know what I mean? I mean, it is, but what Thomas Jefferson and others were saying is like, yo, you can't abuse them and then go chill with them in the same house. Like, you gonna sleep. And this was the fear. Their founding fathers said that, like, hey, and we could talk about that as well, because I think that's very important.
Absolutely.
Because they're like, hey, he perceived it. He was like, this is going to be a problem. And so that's why every other, because they're going to remember, they're going to want, they're going to want retribution. They're going to come back. And this is why every other
side of that, not just retribution, because, you know, we always have the conversation about reparations, but not just that. The other fact is, and we talked about this in the last show, and that is, you bred us to be the best of the best. So we can so if we have to compete against you for commerce, we can outbuild you. We can outdo everything, because we've been bred to build everything that you have. Now you have to do it yourself. And so, you know, this is where, when, you know, the unions and all those things started coming about, because we built this country. We literally built this country, which is where the conversation of white privilege comes from and comes into play. But that is a very powerful thing that Jefferson is saying. It's not just that you have enslaved these people, abused these people, and that there's going to be retribution from that. The other side of that is that you cannot compete with the people that you bred and built to be the strongest of the strong and the best of the best.
Yeah, it's an equation.
It's not an equal society. It's not an equal economic society at that point.
And this is why the young brother earlier today was like, just trying to understand why. You just went through a lot of the why. And you every time we let these people come touch something, they take it over. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
We let them touch a racket. Now they the best in the world. You know, they all action right around here. You know, Venus and Serena. Right. We can't let them. We let them touch it. That's golf. Why did we let them touch golf? Here comes Tiger. Like, you know. Right. So it's everything you let them.
I mean, name the sport. It's been every sport: football, basketball, baseball,
baseball, everything. Don't let these dudes touch this stuff.
Right.
Because they are, you know, Usain Bolt, out of Jamaica. I mean, Usain rip up the place. So it's like, they're like, my goodness. So that is, and this is why you get specific categories that you're allowed to be in. Because even if you perform at the highest optimum of you, I still get to reap all the benefits of you doing all that. I own the stadiums, I own the endorsements, I own the companies, I own the promotions, I own all of that. So yeah, you could get a little piece of something. Like Chicken George, back to roots. Chicken George got a little piece of something. And he said to the master, yo, I heard that you're supposed to give me a little cut of what you make. And then he said, who told you that, Mingo? Like, who told you you're supposed to get a cut? But, you know, hey, take that. You know, here's a little something. And so that whole concept of exploiting It's even in the story. So how can we look at the story and say you don't see some remnants of what, or residue from that time to this? Chicken George was exploited for his ability to raise and fight cocks to win for money, which is a wild concept of fighting cocks. And anyway, but
okay.
But so
it's fascinating because you're dealing with, it's hard for people to get this, but you're dealing with a primitive mind and a sociopathic mind at the same time. There are aspects that are primitive, sociopathic as well.
Yeah, because I'm
now conversation with.
I was like, for real? So it's all about if the chicken is gonna die, like. That's your entertainment. Like you use the cock to kill, to rear him to be so bloodthirsty, and then you rejoice. I didn't get that part. I really didn't get that part. But
and think about that. So that is social, right? Think about that. I had a conversation with Brother Kabahia Wazakamane, who of course you know is in all four hidden colors already, and have had him on my show several times. We did a particular show called From the Pyramids to the Plantation, from the plantation, from the projects to the promised land. And what he shared in that was fascinating because, and I had never thought about this, how, you know, the Euro-Asian from the worm ice age, the fourth ice age, the last ice age. And he talked about how there were generations of, these were melanated people. These were Africans, and over periods of generations. And he was talking about how there were generations of people who never saw the sun. If you can even imagine that, just like people can't imagine generations of slavery, generations where there is no sun and the environment is 200 below zero, as harsh as, you know, 50 below zero at its normal level. And what he did is he painted this picture. He says, our environment from Africa, from the equator, loved us. We had all the fruits, the vegetables, all the water, everything, the world, the sun, it all nurtured us and loved us. When they came about, coming from the caves and coming from the ice age, they came from an environment that they had to conquer. They had to survive. They had to eat each other because there was no food. There was no guarantees that they were going to eat. And so they came out with this sociopathic behavior. Now, for me, that was probably one of the most understandable arguments for the sociopathic mindset of the Euro-Asian, and it speaks to the scene in Roots where they said you can't, and I'm paraphrasing, you can't teach a slave or create. You can't, something to say, you have to make a slave.
Yeah, you can't buy a slave, you have to make one.
Yeah, you have to buy, yeah, you have to make a slave. So you know, when I think about that level, if you can look at it from the lens of a sociopathic people, you can begin to, and where they epigenetically and genetically came from, it kind of makes sense, the mindset of how another human being or a group of human beings can get together and do this to another group of human beings.
And like you said, that there is something about, as we're watching this, like what you said in that explanation is very interesting, one that needs meditating on, because we don't think oftentimes like other people do. And we take that for granted. Mm-hmm. Like certain things that you see in, especially entertainment and media, you have to ask the question, well, whose mind did that come out of? Mm-hmm. Like, what do you think about at nighttime? Like you really meditated about that on your bed? Like you came up with that all by your onesie? You know,
right.
And so we look at it, and we now, when we share thoughts and information, we now absorb other people into our reality. And therefore, those things that would have never been our natural thought process come into our spirit and our mind because we allow it through these mediums. This is why they call it mediums, whether it be television, radio, music, whatever the case may be. And so, because even somebody asked me on the channel, they was like, Emunah, you really think they was dueling? So I had to do a little research, and some other people shared, like, yeah, they was really serious. You know, that's why they say, quote unquote, Black people do crimes of passion. Like, you know, you do something, they're like, yo, I'm gonna come get you right now. Like, they will plan it, like, oh, I'm gonna go home, you know, I'm gonna sharpen up my sword, I'm gonna come back, and then, you know, and to see the whole duel played out, I'm like, are you serious? Yeah. Are you serious? And they're like, do you yield? I'm like, okay, so the dude is missing an arm, a toe, a leg, a finger, and y'all still going at this?
Right.
That's strange. I mean, that was one of the strangest parts to me, because I'm looking at their mindset, and like you said, and that's why I think it's very important. Back to the slavery conversation, is we kept getting back into a certain space because certain things that they did, we really couldn't understand. You know, what I'm saying? We really were like, I'm not really getting it. And so the babies are making noise that made me forget what I was gonna say. When we have this conversation, that's what I was gonna say, came back. It's very important to read from both narratives. We can't assume their voice. There are so many things, like the Thomas Jefferson letters, like the diaries of the plantation owners, a lot of their diaries, that you have to hear their voice, because it allows you to get a realistic, objective view of the institution, if that's what you're in it for. Like, I could say that because, Brother Philippe, truthfully, over the last 18 years, I've been searching for self. I've been searching for, so I guess I'm at a point where I can do that objectively without inserting myself into the conversation and then getting all haywire. So for
but it's a skill set you've been doing, like you said, for 18 years.
Right. I've been actively purging.
So you're a master at that now.
I mean, of purging my own. So now I guess that's why people are like, well, Emunah, how can you do that? And the reality is, I dealt with my own stink first. Nice. Well said. Yeah, I dealt with that first. So it's not that I can now look at, even though it's annoying, some of the verbiage and the way in which, but the truth is the truth. And this is what they thought of you. And this is what they spoke about you when you weren't looking. When your back was turned, when they was in their little enclaves, this is how they thought of you. So never really forget that.
Right, absolutely. You know, the other thing I think about too is that, you know, the difference between offensive and defensive. The Mandingo warrior was defensive. Africans are defensive because of the environment. You defend. Offense is, you know, and understand this is kind of oxymoronic, and because we obviously have to do both and have to live in both worlds. But the psychopathology of the Eurasian of that time was offensive. Conquer and divide, kill, make slaves. It was offense, and that was everything. And it was absolutely amazing to peer into the mind of the slave owners and how they talked, what they said, you know, what they did for entertainment, for leisure. It was unbelievable. It was like, wow, you guys are absolutely sick. And you know, just I'm being nice on my show. I'm being nice. But you know, because I wanted to say, but you got babies around too. That's the other reason I'm being nice. Well, one day when you don't have the babies around, you'll hear a side of Philippe. You'll be like, "Ooh, Philippe, shut that down." But it was amazing just how again, pathological these people were, and how some to this day still are.
But check it out with that, Brother Philippe, because you said we were looking on the outside. Imagine that the so-called house slave who had to look at that and actually be a kind of a participant in that as their occupation. This is what I had to see. I had to, you know, I had to look at you. I had to listen to your conversations to a certain degree. I had to see this whole different world. And so when they come back to the so-called field slave, they're not the same.
No.
They're two different worlds that they're living in. And this is why, you know, there's so many segregations amongst the people. Those who interface mostly with the European, by just the design of the whole thing, they're going to have to change a little bit. Because it's survival. And there's one very interesting thing. I think Chicken George said it in this narrative when his son was upset, about what he had to do. And he said, there's no right way to be a slave. And I said, that's deep. He's like, you're because there's some slaves who say, if I do everything the slave master say, it's going to go well. They realize it wasn't true. There's some who said, if I rebel against everything the slave master say, then I'm gonna be free. Sometimes they realize it wasn't true. Then there was those in the middle. So he says there's no right way to do this thing because it's an oppressive regime. It's an oppressive system. And so that's very interesting. And you know how things bug me. So I actually went and found the name of it. It's called the American Colonization Society. You know how things bug me.
That's Emunah. Whole time we doing the show, ladies and gentlemen, she over there doing research. You're the most I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, you know, it was just bugging me. I'm like, what is the name of that thing? I'm sorry, y'all. I got a little issue in that area. So it's called the American Colonization Society. I definitely myself need to do more research on it. There are a lot of things at the Library of Congress, you know, concerning this information. And basically, they wanted to be able to send you back to where they, you know, drop you off like the fresh produce in the toiletry aisle, basically.
I love that. That is that is a great analogy.
From here, like, oh, you know, it doesn't matter. You'll be all right.
It doesn't matter. Exactly. Yeah, right.
Because all of you people look the same. All you people is the same.
Right. That's like getting in the cab and the cab takes you back somewhere where it's like, I don't live here.
I don't live here, but all of you.
This ain't my house. This ain't my house. It's like, well, it is now, damn it. I'm out.
And that's kind of so I think that's going to be a good study right now. I'm still on this part, but I do remember coming across that information. So if anybody's out there, like I said, there's enough pie for everybody. Just pick a spot and go in, and then bring back your report, what you found, and then we can learn and grow together.
All right. Well, Emunah, how can people get in contact with you? What are your web addresses and your social world so people can continue this conversation and narrative?
Okay, well, at www.emunahyisrael.com. Hold on one second. It's www.emunahyisrael.com, as well as you could go youtube.com/Emunah Y'srael, all one word. It'll take you to my page. And we do the project ongoing, 6 months strong. We're finishing up Henry Box Brown. If you don't know about Henry Box Brown, come check out the Levar project. We'll have the discussion. And it's Emunah Y'srael on all social media, Twitter, or
spell Emunah for us, just for Y'srael, because I got the Y'srael wrong too. So I just want to make sure, because I don't want to.
MUNAH, Emunah. And the last name is YSRAEL, YSRAEL.com. And so you'll be able to check me out in these spaces, you know, do a lot of community service. That's what I call it, community service. Because we need to know.
Yes, we do. We do need to know. So we're going to continue the conversation. Emunah, stick around with me in the green room as we sign off. Everybody, thank you for tuning in to the Philippe Matthews Show After Hours. This wonderful conversation, melanated literacy and conscious conversations with Emunah Y'srael. We're going to continue it on, and we want you to tune back. We'll talk to you next time. Take care, everybody.
All right.